Hello, and welcome back to what is part, 3 of this little mini-series. In this installment, I'll be covering the other half of the political situation on the island of Sodor, the Sudrian Monarchy. If you haven't watched the first and second installments, where I covered the island's parliament and its Independence Day, then I recommend you do so. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get right into it. I should probably address something right off the bat. Why is the Sudrian monarch referred to as Duke rather than King? It's a question that pops up here and there, and the answer lies in Sodor's unique history and its relationship to the British crown. To understand this, we need to go back to the creation of the Sudrian state in 1788. At the time, Sodor was granted partial autonomy under the British government. This agreement allowed the island to form its own parliament and monarchy, giving Sudrians a sense of independence and self-governance. However, there was one major caveat. Sodor still remained under British control in many regards, particularly when it came to foreign policy and broader governance. Because of this, giving the Sudrian monarch the title of king would have created a significant political issue. The island would technically have two kings. To avoid confusion or outright conflict, the monarch of Sodor was instead given the title of duke, a compromise that allowed Sodor to maintain his royal identity while still acknowledging British sovereignty. The title was meant to be unique yet subordinate, ensuring that the Sudrian monarchy didn't overshadow or undermine the British monarchy of the time. Fast forward to 1962, when Sodor achieved full independence. With the island now free from British political ties, many wondered whether the government would adopt the title of king or queen to reflect this new era of sovereignty. However, the title of duke had then become an integral part of Sudrian culture and tradition. It had been in place for over 200 years and was deeply embedded in the island's identity. Changing it would have felt unnecessary and, to many Sudrians, even disrespectful to the island's history. So, the title of duke and duchess was kept intact. The royal family resides in the royal house at Crovan's Gate, a grand estate that has served as the official residence of the Sudrian monarch for over 200 years. Conveniently located near the island's parliament, this proximity reflects the enduring, if diminished, role of the monarchy in Sudrian politics. In the island's current political system, the monarchy retains a presence in the Sudrian parliament through a single, dedicated seat. While this allows the monarchy to participate in the island's governance, their influence is now largely symbolic compared to the significant power the monarchy once held. Historically, the monarchy played a much larger role. When the Sudrian state was formed in 1788, the duke's authority accounted for a staggering 50% of the overall votes in political matters. This influence was later reduced to 30% in 1882, as democratic reforms began to take root. However, it wasn't until 1991 that the monarchy's role was scaled back even further to the one-seat system we see today. Interestingly, it's not mandatory for the monarch to occupy this parliamentary seat personally. They can delegate the role to another representative if circumstances demand, whether out of generosity or due to other responsibilities. After all, the royal family still fulfills many non-political duties, such as attending official events, representing Sodor on the international stage, or presiding over opening ceremonies and cultural celebrations. In this way, while the monarchy's direct political power has faded over time, its role as a symbol of unity, tradition, and cultural identity remains firmly intact. And with me covering much of the other parts of the overall political system, there's not much more to say about the Sudrian monarchy. So, for the remainder of this video, I'll focus on the individual dukes that have shaped Sudrian history. Unlike the earlier segment of prime ministers, where I highlighted the best and the worst, I'll be covering all the island's 7 dukes. It's a short list after all. I'll be presenting them in the order based on the results of a public survey conducted in 2015. This survey aimed to rank all the Sudrian's dukes and gathered input from not only the public, but also Sudrian historians and politicians. So, with that explained, let's dive in, starting from the bottom and working our way to the top. At the very bottom of our list, in 8th place, is Jacob VI, who ruled from 1821 to 1853. Known as the Greedy Duke, Jacob's reign is remembered as the darkest chapter in the Sudrian monarchy's history. When Jacob ascended to the throne in 1821, Sodor stood at the edge of an economic transformation. Across Britain, the Industrial Revolution was revolutionizing society. Railways were connecting towns, factories were creating jobs, and trade was booming. But while the world surged forward, Jacob stubbornly turned his back against progress. Jacob was a deeply conservative and distrustful ruler. He viewed innovations like railways and factories as unnecessary risks that would disrupt Sodor's peaceful way of life. Advisors and the industrialists brought him proposals for railway lines, new ports, and modern infrastructure, but he rejected them outright. Worse still, Jacob siphoned funds meant for public works into his personal treasury. Taxes rose under his rule, but the money disappeared into grand palaces, ornate gardens, and decadent feasts for himself and his favorite courtiers. Public services crumbled. Roads fell into disrepair, ports became outdated, and towns were left impoverished. For the people of Sodor, Jacob became a symbol of selfishness and indifference. The The island's potential lay dormant under his rule, and resentment grew with each passing year. As Jacob's greed worsened, so too did his paranoia. Isolated in his grand estate, he surrounded himself with loyalists who shielded him from the island's anger. He dismissed dissenting voices as traitors, and advisors who dared challenge him were removed from their posts. Jacob's distrust extended beyond politics. He cancelled public appearances, avoided traveling beyond his palace grounds, and withdrew from his people entirely. To many Sudrians, it felt as though their duke had abandoned them, choosing gold over governance and arrogance over accountability. Meanwhile, other nations prospered. As Britain expanded its rail network and industrial powerhouses, Sodor lagged behind. Farmers couldn't transport goods efficiently, businesses struggled, and unemployment rose. Many families left the island in search of better opportunities elsewhere, creating the first wave of immigration in Sudrian history. By the early 1850s, the cracks in Jacob's reign became impossible to ignore. Entire regions were left in poverty, and public anger reached a boiling point. Protests broke out across the island, with calls for Jacob to step down or implement reforms. But before any of that could happen, Jacob's reign came to a sudden and violent end. On July 9, 1853, the Duke was found dead in his bedroom, with 6 gunshot wounds in his back. While the exact details remain shrouded in mystery, it's widely believed that he was assassinated by a small group of conspirators. His death marked the culmination of decades of misrule, frustration, and betrayal. But Jacob's legacy remains. To this day, he is regarded as the worst duke in Sudrian history, a ruler whose greed and stubbornness denied Sodor its potential for over 30 years. In 7th place, we have Hector IV, who lived from 1857 to 1884. Though he never officially ruled as duke, his actions, or lack thereof, still earned him a spot on the list. Hector was the eldest son of Ethan VI, a kind and progressive leader who had dedicated his reign to rebuilding Sodor. Naturally, great expectations were placed on Hector as the heir to the throne, but from a young age it became painfully clear that Hector lacked the qualities of leadership and responsibility his role demanded. While his father worked tirelessly to modernize the island, Hector grew up surrounded by luxury and privilege. Described by contemporaries as spoiled, entitled, and self-absorbed, Hector showed little interest in preparing for his future role as duke. Tutors who attempted to teach him about governance and politics found themselves dismissed or ignored. Instead, Hector spent his days indulging in lavish parties, extravagant hobbies, and expensive travels. Hector's carefree lifestyle quickly earned him a reputation among the Sudrian public. While the island's working class labored to build railways and improve their lives, Hector squandered his wealth in front of everyone. His tendency to spend state funds on personal luxuries became a growing concern for his father, who frequently tried, but failed, to rein him in. This attitude towards leadership only further alienated him from the people. To the Sudrians, Hector represented everything they feared, a ruler disconnected from reality, indifferent to their struggles, and unfit for the throne. Hector's disinterest extended beyond politics. Unlike other members of the royal family, who regularly attended public events and ceremonies, Hector was infamous for his absences. He skipped council meetings, ignored invitations to town gatherings, and avoided opportunities to engage with his people. When he did attend events, his behavior only worsened his reputation. He was often described as dismissive, arrogant, and unapproachable. Behind closed doors, Hector's immaturity became a source of embarrassment for the royal family. His refusal to engage with politics or even learn the basics of governance left his advisors deeply concerned. Despite his shortcomings, Hector's life took a tragic turn in 1884, when a cholera outbreak swept through Sodor. This epidemic struck hardest on the poorer regions of the island, areas Hector had neglected to visit or support during his life. Public frustration turned to anger, as many blamed his indifference for the suffering caused by the lack of modernized healthcare infrastructure. During the height of the outbreak, Hector himself fell ill. Despite his wealth and access to care, cholera proved relentless. He eventually passed away on November 2nd, 1884, at the age of just 27, leaving behind no legacy, no achievements, and little sympathy from the public. While his family grieved, many Sudrians viewed Hector's death as the inevitable result of his disconnect from the people he was supposed to lead. Today, Hector IV is remembered as the Duke that never was, a title that reflects not only his failure to ascend to the throne, but his failure to rise to the responsibilities that came with his privilege. In 6th place, we have Ethan VII, who ruled from 1947 to 1960. Known as the Forgettable Duke, Ethan's reign is remembered not for scandal or failure, but for its overwhelming inaction and indecision during a time when Sodor desperately needed bold leadership. Ethan inherited the throne following the long and eventful reign of his father, Grand Duke David II. David had led the island through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and an era of sweeping modernization, leaving Sodor on firm footing when he passed in 1947. But Ethan was not his father. Where David had been decisive, commanding, and visionary, Ethan was cautious, passive, and risk-averse. Known for his polite demeanor and aversion to conflicts, Ethan preferred to avoid bold decisions in favor of maintaining stability. Unfortunately, this approach would come to define his reign, and ultimately stall Sodor's progress. Ethan's leadership style was often described as hands-off to a fault. He avoided major reforms and left many of his father's policies unchanged, ensuring short-term stability, but depriving the island of the innovation it needed to thrive in the rapidly changing world. Throughout the 1950s, as Britain and other nations experienced the post-war economic boom, Sodor struggled to keep up. Opportunities to modernize infrastructure, expand ports, and upgrade industries were repeatedly missed. Advisors and business leaders urged Ethan to act, presenting him with proposals for projects that could have revitalized Sodor's economy, but Ethan was reluctant to commit. This had a negative effect on several Sudrian industries, which in turn had a negative effect on the Sudrian economy. Even in public life, Ethan's presence was distant. Unlike his father, who had rallied the nation during times of crisis, Ethan avoided public appearances and rarely addressed his people. His speeches, while polite and well-meaning, were seen as hollow, urging patience and perseverance without offering tangible solutions. Over time, enthusiasm towards the monarchy began to wane. While Ethan's reign is often remembered for its stagnation, there was one area where he did attempt to leave a mark: Sodor's independence. Dissatisfaction with the British government had been building for years, particularly after Clement Attlee's nationalization policies began to encroach on Sudrian industries. By the early 1950s, calls for independence were louder than ever, and many believed the time was right for Sodor to break free from British control. Ethan, despite his aversion to risk, took on the task of negotiating independence. For nearly a decade, he led discussions with British officials, hoping to secure independence for Sodor. However, Ethan's cautious nature and lack of political skill proved to be major obstacles. His proposals were vague and poorly structured, and his negotiation style lacked the confidence needed to sway British officials. Despite his efforts, the talks went nowhere. By the late 1950s, frustrations with Ethan's inability to deliver had reached a breaking point. The Sudrian public, once hopeful for change, grew disillusioned with his leadership. Recognizing his limitations and the mounting dissatisfaction, Ethan made the decision to abdicate in 1960. Ethan's abdication was met with quiet acceptance. There was little fanfare, but also little animosity. Most Sudrians viewed him as a well-meaning but ineffective leader, a kind man who had simply been unsuited for the challenges of his time. Following his abdication, Ethan retired to a peaceful life away from public scrutiny. He lived out his remaining years in quiet reflection, often expressing regret for his inability to achieve independence for Sodor. He eventually passed away in 1972. Ethan VII's legacy is a complex one. He was neither a villain nor a hero, but a kind and cautious man thrust into a role he was not prepared to handle. For better or worse, Ethan VII remains the forgettable Duke, a man who tried, but ultimately fell short of meeting the moment. In 5th place, we have Ethan VIII, the current Duke of Sodor, who has ruled since 2001. Known as the ineffective Duke, Ethan has earned a complicated reputation during his reign, beloved for his kindness and charitable nature, yet criticized for his struggles in politics and governance. Ethan stepped into his role at a time of relative peace and stability. Following the well-loved reign of his father, Hector V, the people of Sodor had high hopes for a duke who would embody both compassion and modern leadership. And when Ethan ascended the throne, his early actions seemed to signal promise. Ethan quickly established himself as a duke of the people, much like his father before him. He let go of much of the royal formality and worked to foster a genuine connection with the Sudrians. He could often be seen visiting schools, hospitals, and charities, personally engaging with citizens and advocating for causes close to his heart. His natural warmth and humility made him immensely popular with the public. Ethan championed initiatives to support education, mental health programs, and aid for struggling families. His speeches, always heartfelt and earnest, showed a genuine care for the well-being of the island. But, while Ethan's compassion earned him widespread admiration, his foray into politics revealed a far different story. Early in his reign, Ethan attempted to take a more active political role. He represented the monarchy in parliament for 2 terms, stepping in for his father to help draft policies and engage in debates. However, it quickly became clear that Ethan struggled with the demands of political leadership. Described as well-meaning but indecisive, Ethan often found himself overwhelmed by the parliamentary process. His proposals were vague, poorly developed, or failed to garner enough support to pass into law. His inability to navigate the complexities of governance frustrated both his colleagues and the public. During his term, key proposals for infrastructure upgrade and industrial revitalization stalled under his watch. Critics accused him of being out of his depth, a sentiment reinforced when he voluntarily stepped back and handed his parliamentary seat to his politically astute cousin. This decision marked a turning point in Ethan's reign. While he remained Duke, he quietly removed himself from political affairs, focusing instead on charitable and ceremonial duties where his strengths could shine. And so, despite his political shortcomings, Ethan remains deeply loved by the public. His genuine care for the people, his humility, and his willingness to admit his own limitations has earned him a reputation as a kind but flawed leader. Unlike the failures of Jacob VI or the arrogance of Hector IV, Ethan's struggles comes from a place of good intentions. As Ethan VIII continues his reign, his legacy remains a work in progress. While he may never be remembered as a strong political leader, his compassion and dedication to the people of Sodor are undeniable. In 4th place we have Ethan VI, who reigned from 1853 to 1885. Known as the Kind Duke, Ethan's leadership was defined by his compassion, humility, and vision for a better Sodor. His reign marked the dawn of a new era, one of progress, modernization, and renewed trust in the monarchy. Ethan ascended to the throne in 1853 under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. His predecessor, Jacob VI, had left the island in disarray. The public's faith in the monarchy had been shattered by Jacob's greed and mismanagement, and the assassination that ended his reign left deep scars across Sodor. At just 32 years old, Ethan found himself facing a monumental task to rebuild not only the island's infrastructure, but also its spirit. Unlike Jacob, however, Ethan possessed the innate sense of empathy and responsibility. He was determined to lead by example, and his reign would become a shining testament to what leadership could achieve when rooted in compassion and progress. Ethan's most significant contribution, and perhaps his most enduring legacy, was his embrace of railways. By the mid-19th century, railways were transforming economies across Britain and the rest of the world, connecting distant towns and fueling industrial growth. While Jacob had stubbornly rejected this innovation, Ethan saw its potential to unite and strengthen Sodor. The completion of the first railway was nothing short of revolutionary. Towns and villages that had once been isolated were now connected. Farmers could transport their goods to the markets faster and more efficiently. Industries began to flourish as trade routes expanded. The railways became the backbone of Sodor's economy, a symbol of progress and unity that endures to this day. Ethan's personal involvement with the project also earned him widespread admiration. He ensured that workers were paid fairly and that safety was prioritized, values that set him apart from other leaders of the era. His genuine care for those who built the railways made him beloved amongst the working class. While the railway was his crowning achievement, his reign was also marked by his dedication to improving the lives of ordinary Sudrians. He understood that progress meant more than economic growth. It meant ensuring that every citizen could share in the benefits of modernization. Beyond infrastructure, Ethan worked to improve housing conditions for families living in poverty. He launched initiatives to repair and rebuild homes, often visiting projects personally to inspect their work and speak with the residents. His belief in the dignity of every Sudrian earned him deep respect and loyalty. While Ethan was a progressive leader, he also understood the importance of tradition. He carefully balanced modernization with respect for Sodor's culture and heritage, ensuring that progress did not erase what made the island unique. His ability to bridge divisions between rich and poor, conservative and progressive, allowed him to lead with unity. While not all agreed with his policies, few doubted his intentions and his love for the island. After more than 3 decades of leadership, Ethan VI passed away in 1885 at the age of 64. His funeral was attended by thousands of Sudrians, from industrial workers to local farmers, all mourning the loss of a leader who had devoted his life to their well-being. Ethan left behind a transformed Sodor. The railways he championed had connected the island and driven its economy forward. And he restored the monarchy's place in the hearts of the Sudrian people, proving that leadership could be a force for good. Today, Ethan VI is remembered as the Kind Duke, a leader whose compassion and vision rebuilt an island left broken by greed. His legacy lives on in every railway station, every schoolhouse, and every home that carries his mark. In 3rd place we have Hector V, who reigned from 1960 to 2001. Affectionately known as the Royal Goofball, Hector was unlike any Duke Sodor had ever seen. His reign, spanning an incredible 41 years, is remembered for its laughter, compassion, and transformative leadership during one of the most pivotal eras in Sudrian history. What made Hector stand out was his unique leadership style, shaped in part by his neurodivergence. Diagnosed with autism at an early age, and later becoming the first Sudrian to be officially diagnosed with ADHD, Hector approached his role as Duke in a way that broke from tradition. Where past dukes relied on formality, professionalism, and rigid adherence to protocol, Hector embraced humor, warmth, and relatability. He believed that a duke should not sit above his people, but walk alongside them, listening to their concerns and sharing in their joys. This down-to-earth approach quickly endeared him to the Sudrian public, who saw him as not just their leader, but as one of their own. From the moment he took to the throne in 1960, Hector brought an air of lightheartedness to the monarchy. He was famously fond of magic tricks, a hobby he developed as a boy, and he often entertained both children and adults alike with sleight-of-hand performances. Whether at royal events, schools, or village affairs, Hector's playful antics brought joy to Sudrians of all ages. However, beneath the humor lay a leader of sharp intellect and unwavering resolve. Hector's informal style often disarmed critics and won over skeptics, allowing him to lead in his own unique way. Behind his charm was a visionary leader determined to modernize Sodor and prepared for the near future. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, Hector championed policies that transformed the island into a thriving, self-sustaining nation. Alongside that, his ability to connect with the public proved to be one of his greatest strengths. He regularly traveled across the island, unannounced, visiting farmers, factory workers, and shopkeepers to hear their concerns firsthand. This hands-on approach earned him immense respect and loyalty, as Sudrians felt their duke truly understood and cared about their lives. He spearheaded an expansion of Brendam Docks, turning it into a major hub for international trade and exports. He also invested heavily in the Pilgotted Industrial Corridor, turning it into one of the island's largest financial sectors. He also invested heavily in cultural events and tourism, something that was questioned at the time by critics. However, these decisions ultimately proved wise. Sodor became a popular destination for travelers, drawn by its natural beauty, unique heritage, and growing reputation for hospitality. Hector's greatest achievement, however, came early in his reign, securing Sodor's full independence in 1962. The idea of independence had been discussed for decades, but it was Hector who turned the dream into reality. Unlike his predecessor, whose attempts at negotiations had stalled due to indecision and poor strategy, Hector brought a bold and pragmatic approach to the table. He reframed the discussion, not as a plea for separation, but as a mutual opportunity for both Sodor and Britain. He emphasized that Sodor was no longer a dependent territory, but a capable, thriving nation ready to stand on its own. He highlighted Sodor's thriving industries as evidence that the island could sustain itself without British oversight. He highlighted Sodor's location in the Irish Sea, which made it a valuable partner in the Cold War era. He proposed aligning Sodor with NATO, emphasizing his contributions to seafaring security during World War II, including the first and second battles of the Celtic Sea and the Battle of Okinawa. Also, unlike former territories of the UK, Hector argued that Sodor did not need to join the Commonwealth of Nations to maintain friendly ties with Britain, this instead to be approached through NATO. Hector's charm and pragmatism were game-changing. Some rumors even state that he performed a few magic tricks in front of British officials during meetings, diffusing tensions and winning goodwill. The negotiations culminated in the Agreement of 1962, granting Sodor full independence. On August 2nd, 1962, Sodor officially became a sovereign nation. The day was marked by island-wide celebrations, with parades, music, and speeches. At the heart of it all was Hector V, delivering his now legendary Speech of Sodor in Sidmouth Square, which has since been regarded as one of the greatest speeches in Sudrian history, cementing Hector's legacy as the duke who made independence possible. Following independence, Hector continued to lead Sodor with the same humor, humility, and dedication that defined his reign. He balanced modernization efforts with a deep commitment to preserving Sodor's culture and traditions, ensuring that the island's identity remained intact even as it grew on the global stage. Though Hector's health began to decline in the late 1990s, he remained a beloved figure. Until his final years, he continued attending public events, performing magic tricks for children, and engaging with the people who adored him. When Hector passed away in 2001 at the age of 81, Sodor entered a period of mourning unlike any in its history. Thousands of Sudrians lined the streets for his funeral procession, many holding playing cards as a tribute to their playful and compassionate duke. Hector's reign is remembered not just for its humor, but for its substance. He modernized Sodor, secured its independence, and united its people with laughter and love. His ability to blend compassion with progress made him one of the island's most beloved leaders. In second place, we have Grand Duke Ethan V, who ruled from 1788 to 1821. Known as the Father of Sodor, Ethan is celebrated as the visionary leader who gave Sodor its voice, its identity, and its first taste of independence. His reign is regarded as the beginning of modern Sudrian history, a time of diplomacy, cultural renewal, and a quiet but unshakable resolve that would forever change the island. When Ethan became governor in 1779, Sodor was a land in conflict, politically, culturally, and emotionally. The island had been fully incorporated into the United Kingdom under the Act of Union of 1707, a decision that brought political oversight from Westminster but left Sudrians feeling overshadowed and unheard. The island's unique culture and traditions were at risk of being lost, and resentment simmered just below the surface. Ethan, however, was a man of vision. He believed Sodor could exist alongside Britain, while maintaining its own identity. His reign would become a testament to diplomacy, perseverance, and a profound understanding of his people. From the very beginning of his reign, Ethan V sets his sights on one goal, securing greater autonomy for Sodor. But rather than pursuing rebellion or bloodshed, he chose a path of negotiation and diplomacy. Ethan spent years carefully building his case, presenting arguments to British officials that were both practical and moral. Most importantly, he lobbied tirelessly for the creation of a Sudrian parliament, a governing body that would allow the people of Sodor to have a say in their own affairs. Ethan's calm persistence and quick wit earned him respect even among skeptical British politicians. After years of tireless effort, Ethan achieved what many thought to be impossible. In 1788, a partial autonomy agreement was signed. Under this agreement, Sodor gained his own parliament, allowing the Sudrians to govern local affairs. The island maintained its own monarchy, with Ethan as the reigning duke. While still politically aligned with Britain, Sodor was granted the freedom to preserve its culture, tradition, and integral governance. The signing of this agreement marked a turning point in Sudrian history. For the first time in decades, the people of Sodor felt a renewed sense of pride, identity, and hope for the future. Ethan V understood that independence was more about political control. It was about fostering a shared identity. During his reign, he championed efforts to celebrate and preserve Sudrian culture. He commissioned the creation of the Sudrian Charter, a document outlining the island's traditions, values, and history. This charter became a symbol of Sudrian pride, passed down through the decades. Despite his achievements, Ethan remained a deeply humble and compassionate leader. His belief in fairness and justice led him to implement policies that eased the burden of taxes on the poor, while encouraging economic growth. Ethan passed away in 1821, after 42 years on the throne. His funeral was attended by thousands, with citizens from every corner of Sodor gathering to pay their respects. The sorrow was immense, but so too was the gratitude. In the years that followed, Ethan was posthumously awarded the title of Grand Duke, one of only 2 dukes in Sudrian history to receive this honor. It was a fitting tribute to the man who laid the foundations of the island's future. At the very top of our list, in first place, is Grand Duke David II, who ruled Sodor from 1885 to 1947. Known as the Unworthy Duke, David's story is one of extraordinary transformation. He rose from uncertain beginnings to become a ruler of unmatched wisdom, strength, and resilience. Guiding Sodor through some of its darkest chapters in the modern era, his leadership ensured the island's survival, prosperity, and unity through decades of turmoil. David's reign spanned an incredible 61 years, making him the longest reigning duke in Sudrian history. From his early struggles to his pivotal role in 2 world wars and the Great Depression, David II shaped Sodor's destiny and earned his place as a true legend. David was never meant to rule. Born the second son of Ethan VI, the throne was intended for his elder brother, Hector IV. But after Hector's passing in 1884, the just 18-year-old David became the heir apparent. By 1885, his father's health was rapidly declining, and David would eventually be crowned Duke of Sodor at the age of just 19. His youth and inexperience were glaring. Advisors described him as timid, overwhelmed, and unprepared for the immense responsibilities of leadership. The public, still grieving from the loss of Ethan VI, looked up to David with skepticism, referring to him as the unworthy duke. David's early reign was marked by struggle. He lacked confidence and experience, and for the remainder of the 19th century, he made mistakes that eroded public trust. But what set David apart was his willingness to learn. He surrounded himself with skilled advisors, listened to their counsel, and over time began to grow to his role. By the dawn of the 20th century, David had transformed from an unsure boy into a thoughtful, decisive, and determined leader. David's turning point came with his intervention of the mismanaged Sodor Mainland Railway. By the early 20th century, the railway's board was riddled with corruption and broken promises to improve infrastructure that threatened Sodor's economy. In a bold and controversial move, David dismissed basically the entire board, replacing them with reformers who prioritized efficiency and fairness. His actions were seen as cold, but necessary, marking the first time David displayed the sharp resolve that would define his later years. It was during this period that David earned the public's respect. He became known as a man willing to make difficult decisions for the good of the island, no matter how unpopular they might be. When World War I erupted in 1914, David proved himself to be a leader of both vision and compassion. Recognizing the strategic value of Sodor's ports and railways, he mobilized the island's resources to support the Allied war efforts. Brandon Docks became a hub of activity, shipping supplies and materials, while factories across the island worked tirelessly to produce goods for the front lines. But David's leadership went beyond logistics. Understanding the importance of morale, he delivered regular radio broadcasts to the people of Sodor. His calm, steady voice became a source of comfort in uncertain times. Citizens would gather in their homes and town squares to listen, drawing strength from their duke's unwavering resolve. By the end of the war, David was hailed as a hero. His leadership had kept Sodor stable and united, and his ability to inspire hope cemented his place in the hearts of his people. In 1929, the world was rocked by the Great Depression, and once again, David rose to the challenge. Working closely with Prime Ministers Miles Normell and later Keith Sardif Johnson, David helped implement bold policies to protect Sodor's economy. He supported public works projects to create jobs and stimulate growth. He pushed for reforms in agriculture and industry, ensuring that struggling sectors received the support they needed. David's steady hand guided Sodor through the worst of the Depression, and the island emerged stronger than ever. His willingness to act decisively, while still caring for the most vulnerable, further solidified his reputation as a leader of both strength and compassion. As World War II loomed, David, now in his 70s, once again proved his greatness. Despite his age, he led Sodor with extraordinary energy and foresight. Recognizing the island's vulnerability to airstrikes and sabotage, David implemented defensive strategies that saved countless lives. Having met both Hitler and Mussolini in years before the war, David understood their tactics better than most. Using his insights, he accurately predicted where air raids and sabotage attempts would occur, allowing critical infrastructure to be protected. Notable examples of these were the viaduct, the rolling bridge, the Kurt Ronin shipyard and port, and the Peel-Godred iron ore mine. Sodor also played a key role in the Allied supply chain. Factories ramped up production of weapons, ships, and essential goods, while the island's docks became vital supply hubs. David's leadership ensured that Sodor contributed to the war effort while keeping its citizens safe. By the end of World War II, David was hailed as one of the greatest leaders, not just in Sudrian history, but in the eyes of Allied nations as well. His ability to navigate crisis after crisis with wisdom, strength, and compassion made him a figure of near mythical status. David II passed away in 1947, at the age of 81. His funeral was attended by tens of thousands of Sudrians, as well as dignitaries from all around the world. The island mourned the loss of a leader who had given them everything. Hope in times of despair, courage in times of fear, and unity in times of division. In recognition to his unparalleled contributions, David was posthumously awarded the title of Grand Duke, thus only the second Duke to be awarded this. This act cemented his place as the greatest Duke in Sudrian history. Whew, hope you're not tired of hearing me yap, but that concludes my little mini-series on this politics of Sodor. Hope I didn't bore you to death. So, with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.